All right, Andy, thank you so much for coming here. Just we'll give you a chance to kind of open up and say a couple words about members of the Arlington Republican Club.
Well, thank you, Alex, and thank you to the members of the Arlington Republican Club for this opportunity. My name is William Anthony Porter. All of y'all know me as Andy, though, and I'm running for the Second Court of Appeals. There are five of us in this race, and I'm the lone prosecutor in the race. I've been serving as one of your assistant district attorneys here in Tarrant County for almost 7 years. Before that, I was a staff attorney at the Sixth Court of Appeals in Texarkana, and then before that, I was a trial and appellate prosecutor out in East Texas. And I look forward to earning your vote for March 1st.
Fantastic. All right, so I have some questions for Andy that the same questions that all the candidates have, and just want to go through it. And there's no right or wrong answer. These are just questions for the members to get a feeling for who you are, more as a person and as a Republican and as a citizen of the United States and Texas. My first question is: do you believe our legislative elected officials should vote according to their conscience or the will of their constituents?
Well, we've got a representative democracy in the United States, and I believe that the people have elected our legislatures and our legislators to go down to Austin and represent them. So it is up to the representatives to reflect the desires and the obligations of their constituents. So to answer the question, they need to represent their constituents.
Okay. All right, so my next question is going to be, which part of the U.S. Constitution is being undermined the most, and why?
That is a great question. Currently, the balance of powers between Article 1 and Article 2, and I fault Congress for that. They have allowed the president to usurp the authority of the legislature by acquiescence to the president's will. And it's up to Congress itself to reassert its authority in that arena. James Sundquist wrote a great book several decades ago about the decline and resurgence of Congress that tracked the history of those two bodies over a period of several decades. And we saw in the 30s and right before the Great War that Congress was on a resurgence. But during that time of World War II, there was a little bit of regression in acquiescence to the president's war authority. And now we're seeing some of that mirroring. We had two wars over the last 20 years, and Congress has somewhat acquiesced its authority to the president. And it's time for Congress to take its leadership role back, especially in areas of economic interest.
Okay, great. Now, my next question is, what is the most important part of the Texas Constitution to you?
Oh, golly. Probably our own Bill of Rights. There are a couple of elements in our own Bill of Rights that are a little bit more expansive and protective than the federal government's Bill of Rights. And I've always enjoyed those differences and learning about those differences, learning about the historical importance of why our state founders wanted to have greater protections than the federal charter. So that would be my first choice.
Okay, so my next question is, what is the most significant barrier you have seen for litigants to receive justice in our court system?
Lack of knowledge. And part of that is perhaps we as attorneys and judges have not done enough to educate the citizenry about how the legal system works in the United States. Alex, as a criminal defense attorney, you know most of your clients come into your office scared out of their minds. They don't know what to do. They've been charged with some heinous crime, or they've got a family in distress, and they don't know what to do. They need someone to lead them and guide them through the very complex system that is the American legal system. And it's not so in other countries. In some other countries around the world, people aren't as reticent when they become involved in the legal system. And so we as attorneys need to help the public overcome that knowledge barrier. They don't understand how the American legal system works, and we need to do a better job of educating the public.
Fantastic. All right. So my last question is, Andy, if you were a benevolent dictator for a day, all right, which law would you change and why?
Wow. It's hard for me to do because I'm such a law follower and I'm not a legislator, and so I don't think in those terms. Oh, golly.
But then, I mean, to put it in context, what law would do you find the most unjust? The one that is the law, we have to follow the law, but we don't like the law. It's a bad law.
I wouldn't change a law. I would change a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. And I'll change the one that came down this week, Montgomery versus Louisiana, that made Miller versus Alabama retroactive.
Can you explain that so the members know?
A few years ago, in 2012, Justice Kagan wrote an opinion in Miller versus Alabama that made it unconstitutional to sentence a juvenile offender to life without the possibility of parole for a capital crime that normally would be death penalty eligible in the state of Texas. And so after 2012, a juvenile, someone 17 years of age or younger who commits capital murder, cannot automatically get life without parole in the state of Texas. Now, that doesn't mean they cannot get life without parole at all, but it just cannot be an automatic sentence. This past Monday, Justice Anthony Kennedy, in a 6-3 majority opinion, wrote that Miller versus Alabama is retroactive. And the case was Montgomery versus Louisiana. And what it meant in that specific case, this was a man who committed capital murder. He murdered a East Baton Rouge Parish police officer in 1963. And the effect of this holding by Justice Kennedy is that 50 years after his trial, he gets a new punishment hearing because the Supreme Court held Miller versus Alabama is retroactive. And in order to reach that result, they just created a new law out of whole cloth with no footing in the Constitution. Justice Scalia, Justice Alito, Justice Thomas all pointed that out in their respective dissents. And that's one I would change because it's going to open up a Pandora's box and create a huge burden not only on the American court system, especially our trial courts, state trial courts around the nation, but it's also going to create a burden on the 50 state legislatures who are going to have to go back and amend their sentencing laws.
Okay, great. Do you have anything closing that you want to say to the members of the club when they get to the video?
Again, Alex and the rest of the ARC membership, thank you for this opportunity to meet with you, to answer these questions. I really appreciate the probing nature of the questions. It's obvious you put a lot of thought into this. I've really enjoyed being a member of the Arlington Republican Club. I've been involved since, I guess, 2010, as far back as I can remember. But I really have valued the friendships that I've made over the years. And I look forward to continuing to be a member for many, many years to come. I hope that over this period of time, you've gotten to know me not just as a lawyer, not just as a prosecutor, but as a person, and I hope that those relationships will continue well after the election. I look forward to continuing my membership, and I hope for your support on March 1st. Andy Porter, Second Court of Appeals. Thank you.